Welcome to Rising Above It. I'm your host, Nancy Siegel. Today's topic is Triumph Over Torture. We are going to be interviewing a special guest who is an Afghanistan refugee. He's an author, photographer, and a musician, as well as a leader for the Central Coast Islamic Center of Santa Maria, Mohammad Mohabbat. Welcome, Mohammad.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. I appreciate this opportunity for giving me a chance to be on your show.
Well, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
You've been through a lot to be here. So, Mohammad, tell us about who is Mohammad and tell us about yourself.
Well, I'm, like you said, a political refugee from Afghanistan, but I'm an American citizen now. I've been here over 30 years, and I have been involved in the community. I'm an engineer, and I'm also, like you mentioned, a photographer and an inspirational speaker, and I'm involved in the community. I want to help the community to overcome some of the difficulties in life, and also to get rid of some of the ignorance and misperception about different communities and cultures and how we can get along and how can we live together in this world. Yes.
Okay, wonderful. You're busy. In other words, you've kept yourself busy for how many years have you been in the U.S.? The second time.
The third time.
Third time.
I have been here 3 times.
Okay.
The third time I came here was 1981.
Okay.
And I stayed here and I have not been back.
Okay. Okay, so tell us about Afghanistan, and we'll start with the beginning of your story while you were growing up in Afghanistan, and then we'll talk more about what's transpired since your childhood,
Yes.
which is a lot. So we have, hopefully we'll get through it all. So what was it like to grow up in Afghanistan?
Well, I was born in 1947, about 65 years ago. At that time, Afghanistan was really, like I said in my book, it was frozen in time. Afghanistan was really isolated and was just a country to itself, and was not very rich economically, was not very developed, and 99% of people were illiterate. But very proud people, happy people, content in life, and very hospitable.
Okay, so they had even though they didn't have all the luxuries of civilization, a modern day, they had a great attitude.
Yes, they had pride, they had hospitality, they liked what they had, because they were not aware of the rest of the world. What could they have? They thought that the whole world is like that, and that's the way of life, and that's how it is, and they had accepted it, and so I was part of that community myself.
Okay.
Yes.
And so tell us about your family life. What did you grow up with? Siblings, parents?
Yes, Nancy, I grew up, my parents, bless their hearts, had 10 children.
Well, sound like my family.
5 boys and 5 girls.
Okay.
So we had a big family, and we all grew up together. I was the middle child, and I was the child who was the most quiet, reclusive. And I was not a normal child. I would not go out, outside to play or, like a normal kid or whatever. I would always either go to school and then come back home and do my homework and then think about life. Where did I come from? Why am I here? And where am I going? What's the purpose of life? At really early stage of my life, I was just thinking about things that, a child normally would not think, and they would be, they would care less where food comes from or where we came from or where we're going. They would be busy with their daily activities and happy playing together and stuff like that. So I was a little bit different.
Very introspective and
very quiet.
Deep thinking.
And everything I kept to myself. I wouldn't even share it with anybody else because I thought they wouldn't even understand or make fun of me, because everybody else was just a normal typical child.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And so, what? Tell us about where you lived, the conditions, and the place of Kabul. Is
Yes.
that correct? Yeah.
Yeah, Kabul was, like I said, at that time, pretty primitive. Houses were made of mud. And even though Kabul was more civilized and developed than the rest of the country, but still compared to the Western world, it was pretty much primitive. And so we would walk to school all the time, and we would go there, and the school system was completely different, and boys' school were different and separate from girls' school. Nobody could approach girls or talk to them because of the culture and everything. And corporal punishment was the norm in order to learn and become a good student. Whatever, we would be punished and physically beaten and everything if we misbehaved or did not do our homework. Or
so it was very strict.
It was very strict. It was very disciplined.
How did that affect you as a child? What were your views on that?
I did not like it. To me, you don't have to instill pain in order for somebody to get better or survive, especially a child. Child does not know any better. They are being child, and that's why we're adult, and we need to show them more love and respect and understanding. At the same time, get them to respect us rather than fear us. We would fear our teachers rather than respect them. And that was something that really affected me in my life. And when you read my book, or whoever reads it, they will see how I stood up for a Jewish boy who was being beaten, and how I took all the beating because of he was innocent and he hadn't done anything wrong, and I stood up and spoke up for him, and which nobody else could dare even do something
But
like
you did that.
Yes, I did that, and I took the punishment, and my conscience is clear now. I'm glad I did that.
That's very good. Wow. So while you were a child growing up in Afghanistan, did you have dreams that you aspired to, or were you just living life as you knew it?
I had dreams that I thought were not achievable, but still I was dreaming about it. I was dreaming that one day I will affect other people's lives in one way or another. And I was thinking about either becoming a cinematographer here in the Western world in Hollywood, and through my cinematography and the visual impacts, I will change the world for better. And also I thought maybe, since that was a dream, and I never thought I would even make it to America in my life, but that was my dream. And then I also wanted to become a physician so that I can help the poor and the sick, and especially the ladies, when at that time women were dying during childbirth. Really, the percentage was so high that you wouldn't believe it. So that really was one of my goals, to do something for the community.
Okay.
Yes.
And did you want to stay in Afghanistan, or did you want to venture out into the world?
I actually loved to see the rest of the world. That was my dream, like I said, my desire. But how to achieve that,
you had no idea.
That was a different story. Like, we may have nowadays a dream to go to Mars or another planet, because America was just another planet for us.
I see.
Not another country. So just
things were very different. That was
very
back in
different. The world was not as small as it is now.
Yeah.
And
we didn't have the computers and the
no
internet.
Computer, no internet, no instant TV, nothing, no news from any, it was just a completely isolated place. Once in a while, we'll get the news from the Western world, and the news would be old by the time it got there, Yeah.
Okay. Was it censored? Was the
Yes.
news? Okay.
All the media was run by government.
Okay.
And they owned the media, and they would publish whatever they wanted. So it was completely censored, yes.
Okay. And so in a moment, we're going to show your first, the first slide, the first PowerPoint, and but I have a couple questions for you.
Oh, sure.
We're going to fast forward to your adventure as the first foreign exchange student from Afghanistan. And why don't you tell us a little bit about what happened with that, and how you happened to become the first foreign exchange student?
Oh, that's a great question, Nancy. You're asking all the right questions, as if you have read my book already. Like I said, in school we were really afraid of the teacher, and then especially the principal. And like I said, I would always sit down and do my homework and study and stuff like that. So I became the top student in the school and pretty much in the whole country. And
in the country of Afghanistan.
Yes.
That's amazing.
And one day I was sitting just minding my own business in my classroom. I just turned 16. I was a teenager, and the custodian came and brought a note to the teacher, and the teacher read that, and he looked at me and back to the note and at me again and said, "What did you do wrong?" I said, "Oh man." He said, "The principal wants you in his office." Oh, you know how bad that is, you know. And I thought I'd be beaten to a pulp, you know. I had not done anything. I was a quote-unquote perfect student, a perfect angel. I never bothered anybody, didn't do anything wrong. So when I entered the office there, I was shaking. My mouth was dry, my throat and everything. And the principal asked me to sit down, and I was, sat down, and every move he made, I would be afraid that he might get up and beat me up or do something. And eventually he told me that since I have been a very good student, a role model, and a perfect ambassador for Afghanistan to come to America, to live with a family for a whole year and go to school over here, represent the country, and be here. And I thought he was just making fun of me, making a joke, because at that time nobody ever had come from high school. There was no exchange student program, never in Afghanistan before.
What prompted them to do this? Because do you have any idea why the government, the Afghanistan government,
yes,
and the U.S.
Well,
agreed to this?
There was an exchange program called American Field Service, headquartered in New York, and they would get students from all over the world as exchange students, and they would live in America for a school year and then go back. But this was the first time that it came, and it was extended to Afghanistan. And so they extended that to our school, which was the top school in the country, and they had asked for students from there to come to America and live over here. And so when he got that program, he looked among all the students, and I was one of the students that he chose, and so I made it here to America, not knowing English or not knowing where in the world is America or how I'll get there and how I will survive and all this stuff. Yes.
So you boarded a plane, not speaking English.
Yes.
Not knowing really anything about America.
Exactly.
And other than maybe what little, if any, that was in the news. And what did your parents think of this, and your siblings?
My siblings were proud. My mother was very proud of me, because nobody in the country had done that before. But my father was, since he was an army officer, he would serve in different places. He was not in Kabul.
Okay.
And but we had to stay in Kabul because we went to school there. Other places did not have, high schools and stuff like that. But also, she was concerned about how I would survive the trip and make it to America, just a little kid, all alone, going all the way to the other side of the world, to an unknown country, with unknown religion or culture, food and people and this and that. And I had heard so many myths about America, and the only thing that I seen about America was, some Western movies, and I thought American cowboys and Indians chasing each other and shooting each other and drinking all day long, and I was Not sure if I would survive the
The
whole
wild,
year.
wild west.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank goodness you were brought to civilization.
Exactly. What a shock it was when I landed in New York City. You
Yeah,
know, that was
yeah.
quite a shock for me.
I would imagine.
Yeah.
Let's pull up that PowerPoint right now, and you can tell us a little bit about.
Sure.
There we go.
Yeah, this is my picture and the newspaper. This is when I escaped from Afghanistan to India.
Okay.
And then they heard about me back here, and they printed my story there, saying that I made it back alive, and,
Okay.
and I was getting out of there, yes.
Okay. All right. So that's a little bit before what we're talking about here, but that's okay.
Yes.
How did you find the Americans when you came over?
I found Americans completely opposite what I thought.
And what did you think about them?
I thought about them that being really kind of snobbish, kind of minding their own business, kind of looking down on other people, and not having.
That's all right. No, kidding.
Not having compassion and love and this and that. But when I went and lived with that family there.
And you were in Kansas, correct?
Of all the places in heartland of America, in the middle of Kansas, in the Bible Belt of America, a Muslim little teenager living with a very devoted, beautiful, white Christian family. And they accepted me as their child, and I accepted them as just my foster parents. And we bonded so beautifully after I learned English and could communicate. And after making so many funny mistakes until I learned English and about the culture and system.
How long did it take you to learn English? Because you seem to be obviously a bright student, so you probably picked up on it fairly quickly.
That's a good question too, yes. I had no choice. I had to sink or swim. There's nobody who spoke my language. 24 hours a day I was really exposed to English. And after a few days I was enrolled in high school to go to school as well. And every day when I come home from school, my American mom would sit me down and say, okay, what was your assignment? Let's go over this, and we'll open the book. And she would ask me to read, and I'd start reading the first word or first sentence, and I could not even read that part, and she would correct me, and then I'd say, what does that mean? And she would explain it with a big smile, but she would explain it in English.
And
so
you still didn't know, right?
I said, what does that mean? And then from there, what does that mean? Until she finally would draw it or act it out or something. So that's how I learned English, and it took me about 3 months.
Wow, that's very fast.
And after 3 months, I gave my first speech about Afghanistan to the student body there, and everybody was shocked when they heard me. My speech, especially the vice principal was sitting at the end there, his jaw dropped. He could not believe it that I was the same student.
That's amazing.
And I was cracking jokes, and I was answering questions, and it was amazing.
That's amazing. 3 months
Yes.
without, other than your American parents
Yeah.
helping you.
Yeah.
And what did you do, like sitting in a classroom? What were you thinking? Like, how were the other students treating you?
Well, you're all asking all the cool questions, Nancy. You must be a mind reader. Remember I told you that back home, boys and girls were segregated? And the first shock I got.
Oh, now you're with males and females.
Males and females together, these beautiful girls. And my teachers were even women. And they were not even covered in burqas, and I could see their faces, and I could see them. And not only that, they would come and approach me and say, hi, and how are you? And when a girl would put her hand on my shoulder and say, hi, Mohammed, and I had never been touched by a girl other than my own family, and just electric shocks would go through my body, and I would just blush, and I would just sweat, and I could not even say anything. But she was being so friendly, she was being so much, I was the only foreigner in the whole city. So I was drawing a lot of attention, and everybody was so helpful, so accommodating. the teachers, and the whole community. And I fell in love with the community and the people and my family.
What was going through your head when, like, because it's such a culture shock to come to the U.S. and be from the Middle East
Yes.
and where the women are covered, and then to be exposed to that, what was going through your mind? Like, how did you perceive the women? Did you perceive them differently, or did you perceive them just accepting of our culture here?
That's a great question, Nancy. Thank you. You know, when you are exposed to that extreme, it affects you pretty big time at first. My theory is, or for me actually, when I get shocked, I do get shocked, either, you know, surprised positively or negatively, and then I get over my shock pretty quickly. What I do is I think, I analyze things. And for me first, I thought I was committing a sin. It was horrible for me to look at another female up close and talk to her and communicate with her, because we were forbidden to do that until we got married, you know. So that bothered me for a while, but not for too long. And then it dawned on me that, you know, these are people, I should not look at what they look like or their appearance. Look at their beautiful hearts. This is their system, this is their culture, this is their religion. Who am I to judge them? I'm not God.
That's a great lesson.
Why should I play God? I look at their character, look at how beautifully they treat me. I would prefer them over somebody who is covered but has animosity towards me. So I fell in love with them. Do you know that my best friends in school were mostly girls?
I wonder why.
Because they were so sweet, they were so accommodating, they were so beautiful, and they would not let me feel homesick or anything like that. Honestly, to tell you, that year really stands out in my whole entire life like a really, really shining star there.
Okay, so speaking of that, how did it change your life? How did it affect it, and to achieve the accomplishments that you've already accomplished?
Nancy, that year changed my destiny. It was not just a visit. It really changed my roots and every cell of my body. It changed me into another human being. The way the people and what I learned and how I saw things differently, how I interacted with different people, with different religion, different looks, different culture, different food, everything was different. Yet I was fitting there so beautifully. And that's what I learned so much from that experience. It impacted me so much, and I was so young and so thirsty for information and everything, like a sponge. So when the year was over, I was crying, wailing. I was really stuck between two different feelings. I was happy to go back to my country and my people and my parents and my family. Yet part of me did not want to leave because I was leaving my loved ones over here. They were my family too. So it was hard for me to leave. And they were crying just like baby as well. You know, that was really very, very emotional part of my trip. But during the school year, I made so many friends, and I excelled in school, actually, without being beaten, that I skipped 2 grades. I was in 10th grade in Afghanistan. and I came here and graduated from high school.
Wow. That's pretty amazing.
Yes, so I always tell,
In just 1 year.
in just one school year, not even knowing English when I came here, not even knowing the American system of school and teaching and tests and this and that. The whole thing was different. I mean, and so that's when I do my inspirational speeches to young generation, to schools and universities, I talk about these things.
And that's very inspiring to the
You know,
students, I would imagine.
you don't, the problem is exactly the same for different people. You know, if there's a grain of problem there, if you make yourself so small like an ant or a mosquito, then that problem looks so big to you. Everything is relative. But if you make yourself bigger than the problem like a human, then that's like a grain of sand to you. It's nothing. That problem, the sand is the same thing. So for me, I loved the challenge. I wanted to come. That was my dream when I was growing up, and God gave me the opportunity. I had a chance to come here and womanize and have girlfriends and have this and that, and nobody cared. And what I was going to Afghanistan back anyway, and there were no more parents or my culture or my people or nothing to watch me or see what was going on.
But
I did it on my own.
You made the choice to...
I never dated a girl, but I had a lot of friends. I mean, I did not come here for pleasure. I came here to exchange culture and ideas and things like that, and I was representing a whole country. That was a huge responsibility on a little kid. And my teachers were proud of me, the school was proud of me, my family was proud of me. I had a major impact on the family, and they had 2 kids. They were twins. They were a year older than me. I had a big impact on them, the way they talked, the way they behaved and everything, because like I told you, I was just, quote unquote, like a perfect child that anybody would love and adore. Very respectful, polite, patient, fun, you know, and hardworking. It impacted everybody. Yes.
Yeah, so you know, that's the power that we have as people. No matter what age, we can have a positive impact on those that are around us, and we may not even know it at that time.
Yes.
And we may not find out ever in this lifetime, but it's important to, like you said, just do what's right, have a positive impact, and it comes through. So let's move on to your return to Afghanistan. What did you do when you got back to Afghanistan?
Okay, once when my school years was over with, you know, I was here, and like I said, then I was going back home. On the way back home, I was invited to the White House to meet with the President of the United States of America, a child from a remote corner of the world that nobody could pronounce Afghanistan, and nobody knew where Afghanistan was at that time. Afghanistan was not in the news at that time. Nobody knew even if it existed. For me, in one school year, to accomplish so much and be so, you know, a child. And when I met with President Johnson, he gave us a speech, and I was here when President Kennedy was assassinated, which really impacted me big time, and that's all in my book. And he told me that, you know, he told us that when you have lived for a whole year with the American family and seen the good and the bad and everything, nothing has been hidden from you. When you go back home now, you're the ambassador to tell them everything about America. Don't hide anything. Say the truth. And I was really, really impressed by that. Because he could have said, you know, we all have some shortcomings, so please be nice to us and, you know, tell the good things or this and that. He did not mention that. So that really, really stuck to my mind. And when I went back home, I was completely a different person. Face the world. I was ready to change the world in my own mind. I educated my own people about America.
How did you do that?
I had a lot of friends in school, all the visitors who came to see me, and the university. I'd give speeches. And at the same time, Soviet Union, who was our northern neighbor, and they wanted to convert our youngsters into communists. So they were spending a lot of money in propaganda in a lot of their books in our schools. And so people were gravitating towards the theory of communism because Afghanistan was poor, and that really hit the spot, according to them, in theory. But they were also blaming America for all the trouble in the world, and that America is imperialist, and they're coming to take over your natural resources. They're going to do this, and they're brutal, and there's, you know, only a few people control all the poor, and everybody works for them, and they slave, and they
So
do
there was
this.
a lot of
Misinformation and everything,
yes.
and people would actually believe them because nobody else had been in America. They had nothing to, contradict that for them, and, you know. So I took it upon myself. I stood up for America. Back in that remote corner of the world, that there were no Americans with me there. Nobody was telling me to stand up or do something. That's my nature, that I always want to stand up and tell the truth and educate people about the misconception. That's one of the big injustices that our people do. Even today in the media, still the same thing is going on. So I stood up and I told people all the time, do not believe the communists, do not believe, you know, the...
And what was the price that you had to pay for that?
And people will listen to me, and they will turn away those people. So eventually the Soviet Union, since they could not take over peacefully our country, they came and invaded Afghanistan in late 1970s. And once they did that, they knew who to go after. You know, one night I was asleep at home, and they came over, broke into my house with all these AK-47s, you know, half a dozen of these people. They grabbed me, pulled me out from the bed, and started beating me, asking me to tell them where all the documents are and who was paying me to speak up these. They thought I was an American spy, or I was being paid for this. I was the agent or something like that, because I had really created big problems for them. And they searched my house, looked for evidence, and my wife was, you know, pregnant, and when she intervened, she was being beaten badly. I was afraid that she would be losing the child. And they found some of, you know, my yearbook and clippings from the newspaper, you know, the articles that I had thanked Americans, and, you know, the picture of the White House with President Johnson's autograph and his families and everything. They thought they really caught a big fish because I had all this direct connections with the White House, no less.
And here you are, you're just a student that
I was
excelled.
just a person that, you know, and then so they dragged me and blindfolded me, took me to the interrogation in the torture chamber, and there I went through hell.
And did you write about that in your book?
That's in details over in my book.
Okay.
And what I went through.
To find out more about the details, you'll have to read
You
Mohammed's
have to
book.
read
It's
that.
called
And,
My Name is Mohammed.
Yes.
And so where can they find your book, by the way?
The book, you can find it on Amazon.com. You can read the reviews on it.
Okay.
And it's being sold all over the world.
Okay.
Make sure you spell Mohammed correctly, Mohammad. My name is Mohammed. It's a wonderful, beautiful book.
I'm excited to read it.
Very inspirational.
You have an amazing story. So how did it feel to be accused of being a spy and be marked for execution by having gone back to Afghanistan?
Yes, Nancy, that was one of the darkest moments of my life. I was afraid for my life and also for my wife. And I had a toddler, a 1-year-old child. And once the communists, they determined that you're anti-revolution, that you're no longer needed there, they eliminate you without any trial or justice, or not. They just get rid of you. And I was one of those people. I was supposed to be executed. And I was ready for it. Even under the torture, I would tell them that I'm not connected with the American government. I have no interest in politics. All I'm saying is my experience as a child when I went to America, how I was treated by the people. They're loving people, they're nice people, I love them, they love me. I cannot lie. That's what happened, and that's what I was telling our people. The freedom they have, all the things that they have, that impacted me. You want to beat me, you want to torture me, you want to kill me. What else can I say?
So eventually you escaped, obviously.
Yes.
And tell us about your escape.
Well,
where did you go
I changed, how I got out of there, and then for some time I had this little time to live before I was being executed, so I changed my identity, I gained a lot of weight, I grew a beard, I obtained a fake passport, and I trained my children not to call me daddy, and because we were just going to escape separate, like two separate people, and then eventually, at that time, nobody was allowed to leave the country, and it was martial law, and the airports were really surrounded by, the Russian soldiers, and only elite people and some well-known, or if you had any connections, they would get the passport and leave. And how I accomplished that, that's another story. But anyway, then at the airport, they found out that I was on their blacklist, that I could not leave. And at that time, I was supposed to be executed again on the spot because I was escaping the country now. And how that happened and how I got out of that, that's all in the book.
It's all in the book, and it's a very he's filled me in on the details, and it's a very intriguing story.
Yeah, and then I made it out to India, to another country.
So you landed in India.
Yes.
And how long did you live there?
I lived there for half a year, for about 6 months, in total poverty. Had nothing. We escaped only with our shirts on our back, and how we survived there. The kids got sick, no money, no job, no country, no future. Where do you go to? How do you survive?
Right. So besides fearing for your life and not knowing or dealing with the unknown of like how you're going to survive in a country where you're not supposed to be in, what inside you kept you going? What kept you motivated and determined to move forward?
The thing is, we got there, and then I contacted my American host family. We had stopped communicating for a couple years because I did not want any connections from America to come and give them the government the proof that I still have connections there. And my American family had moved from there, so I had forgotten their address, and how sleepless nights I had, remembering one part at a time, and finally wrote them. That's another big thing. But at that time, some other refugees started coming to India, and they could not speak English. They had no clue what to do. They did not know how to survive, and they were not educated. And they had lost women had lost their husbands, children had lost their fathers. They were all executed. They were done. And so when I saw their plight, it affected me even more. And then the thing I did was went to the United Nations office and really forced them pretty much that since more and more refugees were coming to open a UNHCR office, the United Nations Refugee Office in New Delhi, India, and we established that there. And I started volunteering there to help those helpless people. I became the interpreter and the clerical work and everything for the refugees there. That kept me busy all day long. And also when I would hear their stories, I would forget about mine, you know. And even at that time, I was out there to help others, to give, to make them survive, to give them hope. And through United Nations,
what you've done.
And then once you become accepted as a refugee there, then the United Nations would give you a monthly allowance and everything for the kids and for you to survive on. So that was a big help for them until I came back to America.
Okay, so in a moment we'll show a couple more slides. So journeying back to America, how did you make it back to America?
Like I said, I contacted my host family here, you know, from with whom I used to live, and they contacted, you know, different, like they contacted the State Department and other places and the immigration office. But I also applied there at the American Embassy in New Delhi, and my paperwork was being processed, and at that time it took about 6 months to be processed, and me being interviewed and accepted as a political asylum case, and I made it back to America and were greeted back and united with my American host family.
Okay, if we can pull up the slides. There we go.
Yeah, this is when you know, we were being greeted by different people and different agencies, and they're trying to help us, and you know, if they could find me a job or donate something, whatever, so that we could survive.
Okay, and then the next slide. And
yeah, that's when we came to America. The first, you know,
1981.
1981, and that's when
March 27th, 1981. That's 30. Is it 30 years ago?
That's 31 years or what?
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Just to the day. Today's March
Exactly.
27th as well. Wow.
What happened was, you know, the American family that I was with, they had told the whole neighborhood that we were coming, and we were already, like I told you before, that we were in the news before we even came here. So the whole neighborhood was out there to welcome us. There were banners, there were a band playing music for us, there were TV cameras, there were newspapers. We were treated like royalty when we came back. Coming from execution and being treated like that back in America. And so these are the stories that this is grim journey from Afghanistan ends.
Okay. Let's have the next slide. Please, thank you.
Yeah, that's when I was still looking for a job. That was my little son, a year old. He just turned 2 when we came to America, and the article there says that, you know, he's ready to go to work. He's an engineer if anybody's hiring and stuff like that. So we were in the media.
So you had a lot of support from our
a lot of
the
support,
media and the community.
Even though they had lived they have moved the family in a very small community there, but still, you know, people from different cities will come and interview us.
Okay, so for you and your family, what was it like to be in America again?
It was like a breath of fresh air. I felt safe. I was poor. I had nothing, but the only thing that they could not take away from me was my education, my pride, my experience. I was an engineer. I knew that I could make it back. I lost everything that I had there, my house, my cars, my bank account, my job, and everything we left behind, and they took it away from us. And that's what I tell young generation here, how important education is. If I had not been educated, I would starve to death. I would not be able to make it here. So eventually I got a job at the same town that I used to live. And when I went there to give a speech to the same school that I went to, declared that day Muhammad's Day, and the whole student body was there in the gymnasium, and
Oh,
I gave him a
nice.
speech about education and how I made it back and everything. And that was really amazing. And at that time, a family told us that, oh, they're looking for an engineer here, and because you're an engineer, let me contact them. And through them, I finally got a job with a company called Enron. So
Oh, yes, I think most of us are familiar with Enron.
at that time, it was a really nice company. It
Yeah.
wasn't called Enron. It had not merged with another company. They really took good care of us. And even with the first paycheck that I got, Nancy, what do you do with that? I mean, do you pay for your rent, or do you buy a car, or you pay for food, or do you buy pots and pans, or or pay for medicine, or for your utilities? And then I brought my parents over, the rest of the family, that they joined me, and we all lived in the same place with one income, and how we made it, and how finally we have got a very happy and comfortable life. You can do it. It's a land of opportunity. Trust me, Nancy. Whoever says, no, that's not right, I will debate them. It's up to you. The best thing in America is that you have the freedom to go and become whoever and whatever you want to become.
That's true.
It's up to you.
And a lot of people take that for granted, unfortunately.
And nothing
in this
comes
country.
easy. You have to work for it. And if we become lazy and want everything, so that's not the right way.
Instant gratification doesn't go too far.
No, that's...
Yes. So let's see. So you were back in Kansas? Is it, or,
Yes.
When you returned to America? Okay.
Yes.
And so...
First we came to Arkansas.
Okay.
The family was in Arkansas.
Okay.
And then when we were invited to Kansas to give a speech there and be interviewed by the newspaper there, and then people heard about me being there again and looking for a job. So I landed a job there.
Okay. Okay, and that was what year?
It was 1981.
Okay, so
Yes.
fast forward to 9/11.
Yes.
Tell us about that. How did it touch your life, and how did it affect you as being a Muslim and being
Yes.
At one point welcomed into America, and then having to deal with the stereotype
Yes.
of being a Muslim here in the U.S.?
Nancy, at that time, I had moved to the West Coast, and I was working for the city of Lompoc as an engineer, and everything was beautiful. The kids had grown up and attending school, and we were happy. All of a sudden, this horrific thing happened on September 11th. From that moment, my life and my family's life and millions of other Muslims' lives in America changed for the worse because of the fear that the media and some of our politicians instilled in our public. Everybody turned against us pretty much. My friends, my neighbors, some of them, people who knew us for a long time, they turned their back on us. They shunned us. We got so many threatening phone calls that they're going to bomb us. They're going to kill us. We need to get out of there. And my wife was very afraid to even leave the house. If she went out grocery shopping, people would pull her hair in the parking lot. And all I was doing is helping building my new country. I was an engineer. I was developing the city. I was developing my community. I was contributing. I was paying my taxes.
Right.
And look at the same people that actually even knew us, let alone the strangers. And that was a very, very dark moment in my life, that it shook me and woke me up from that sweet dream that I had about America and the public and the people that I knew. The America that I knew from half a century ago had changed drastically, had been polarized because of just a few culprits who did some injustice and wrong things. that the rest of us had nothing to do with it. And we paid for it dearly, even until now.
In the Muslim community.
Muslim community, everybody, that's even in my book, that the reason why I call this, my name is Muhammad, is in order for me to survive, Nancy, I had to change my name from Muhammad to John. Then people who did not know me and ask me for a name, and I tell them my name is John. Because I'm a professional photographer, I had a lot of people coming to my studio, and they would ask my name and stuff like that. First, my business went just down to pretty much zero. My neighbors, they tried to close down my business. They would contact the county and the sheriff's office and this. I had a hard battle to do because they also sided with my neighbors because of this thing that was attached to me and in my life and everything. I was an American citizen. I almost gave my life twice for America without even being an American citizen at that time. And they were questioning my loyalty to America and my sincerity about being an American citizen. And I was really disappointed. My extended family, everybody that I had brought over here, I was really embarrassed because they would point to me and say, you brought us over here to your land of milk and honey. You told us that Americans are wonderful people. They're loving, they're accepting, they're beautiful, they're this and that, and look how we're being treated.
So
I had no...
So now, after experiencing the stereotypes and the banning from the American public towards Muslims and people of your religion, and how has it differed since then, and how have things changed now for you and your family?
Like I said, for my family, for me, any strangers we meet, I still tell them, you know, just for my business and stuff, that my name is John. But then eventually I came out and I said, my name is Muhammad. I want to tell the whole world. Because a name is just a name. It doesn't have any effect on who you are, your personality, whatever. You can be called this or that or this. It's just an identity thing. I think people should be judged by their character.
Well, you've shown good character in our country.
Well, thank you.
More so than some of the Americans that were born and raised here. And for that, I thank you, because you're quite impressive just as a person, a human being, and all that you've accomplished and that you've gone through with overcoming the torture and being accused of and having to escape your home country and then come back to America to live life as your American dream,
yes.
And then to have it pretty much crushed because of the fact of terrorists that, although they were Muslim, not all Muslims, obviously we know that, are extreme.
Right.
And so what is one of the misconceptions about the Islamic
yes.
culture?
Nancy, I believe that every community or followers of every religion have some evil people in them, but the majority are wonderful, beautiful people. In ignorance is the mother of all evil. It's the fear of unknown, the ignorance. We're ignorant about the rest of the world. All we see is burqas and turbans and this, and we fear them. We think of them like less than human. Well, that's the way they dress. This is the way we dress. They're human. They bleed just like we do. They have love. They have children. They have families, and we do. That's the misconception I had about America. First time I came here, and that changed my whole life. And I was ready to give my whole life for America. And I gave my country for it. I gave my people everything. I escaped and came here and started a new life once I got to know Americans, the true Americans, how beautiful and wonderful they are. I'm on a mission to change that. You know, I stood up for America back there because people were wrong about America. Now I'm standing up here for those people that America is wrong about.
Interesting how things
And
played out.
so at least the good part over here is that I have the freedom to say so. That hopefully I'll not be tortured and stuff like that for speaking up the truth. I mean, so my mission is that I want to educate people. I want to tell them. A lot of people, like you're coming back to your question about misconception about Islam. People don't even sit or stop for a second to learn about Islam. Not many people even know what Islam means, the word Islam itself. I've asked just about everybody, nobody knows. But they bash Muslims in Islam.
Well, and I find that to be a true statement. If you ask most Americans about the Muslim religion or anything outside of their own religion, perhaps, like Christianity, they have no idea.
That's
about
right.
it.
So,
and I'm the first one to say I don't know, but
exactly.
I also don't.
But then you
condemn,
don't judge either.
I don't judge and condemn other people
Nancy,
for what they believe
Islam, the word Islam literally means peace and submission. Submission to God's will. What a beautiful, it's a universal thing. It's not even named after a person or a prophet or a being or nothing. Islam means peace and submission.
Okay. So we have about 30 seconds left.
Oh, okay.
I have one question
Go
it's
ahead.
a burning question. If you had the chance to do it all again, would you do anything differently?
Yes. I will do it in a way to really stand up for education, to educate people. I think it's because of the ignorance that we have. Rather than going and researching or meeting a Muslim, going to the Islamic community or reaching out there, asking them directly questions about their religion and belief, go to their families. We just hear whatever from the media and we make our judgment and stuff like that. That's why I'm on a mission to go around the country, around the world, to tell people to not be, submit to the media. And that's the book, yeah.
And if we can get a shot of the book here. Thanks. Okay, so the book is My Name is Mohammed, and you said you can find this in Amazon?
Amazon.com, and we're working on making this into
Where can we find more about you?
You can contact me on, my email is...
we have it up on the screen. We've
there,
had that up on the screen.
Yeah, it was there. So, and also, I'm available to go. I'm being invited to different churches and places and communities to go there.